Hey guys, just a heads up. About 20 minutes into this podcast, there was a terrible high-pitched noise that settled into one of the microphones. I don't know where it came from. I did a lot of work to get it out, so it is not that bad anymore. I ran it through multiple filters, noise removal, but also just frequency removal, did everything I could. But there is a high-pitched noise. But it was an hour and 45 minutes of recording time that I didn't want to just waste. So I'm sending it to you guys out. It doesn't happen until about 20 minutes in, and if you're having trouble, I apologize. I did my best, but I'm hoping that it's subtle enough that it won't be problematic. It was very problematic when I first heard it. It was like, yee! But now it's just like a little, yee! So we'll see. Hopefully y'all enjoy. Enjoy this episode.
On this episode of Star Trek Universe, I'm catching up with Matt, and we're catching up with the release window for Discovery, production updates for Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy, Section 31, and we'll be talking about the new terrifying merger talks that may affect Star Trek forever, right after these words from our mystery sponsors.
Welcome to Star Trek Universe, the podcast where you get to listen in on two lifelong friends sit and chat about Star Trek. Today, on a couch.
Yeah.
My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson. Sitting here next to you on the couch is weird.
It is weird. In the same room, as it were.
Yeah.
We don't do this often, as we've talked about on the cast before. We normally do it on the internet because it's just easier. But today, it was a little better fit. So, how you been? What's been going on?
Well, I've had some yearning in my loins to see Matt. And
why does it have to be in your loins?
Everything goes through my loins.
That's where the humors live. Not on every man, but on Dave.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man, yeah, it's been it's weird that we have so much news. It's like we haven't done an episode in a while.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've done plenty of episodes.
I know. We have.
Me and you have.
Yeah.
I was a little concerned because I was like, oh man, people are going to think that Matt stopped being a part of the show.
Oh, well, that's no good.
I was like, oh man, and they're also going to think that we don't cover news anymore.
Yeah, so that's why we're here.
Yeah,
to cover news and
talk
to
about
present me
just a little bit. And here's Matt.
I'm here. I'm good. I'm really glad to be here. I'm excited for the next Trek thing. It's coming out soon, right?
No.
Oh, really? I thought we had something like February last time we talked.
No, we don't.
Oh.
Prodigy season 1 is going to be on Netflix starting Christmas Day.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the season 2 will come sometime in 2024.
Honestly, we were so annoyed when they decided to take it off of other streaming services. But now that I'm thinking about it and where my mindset is on Prodigy, and we talked about this before when they announced that, the idea that's a great idea because people will be sitting around, their families, and they'll show their the kids around the I don't know, the fire tree, that this is Star Trek, and they'll kind of get introduced.
Yeah.
And I talked about how that's how I got to know Batman 66 or whatever. But what's neat is since it's been gone for 4 or 5, whatever, how many months we haven't been able to watch Prodigy, that many more people will do that. And so even though I thought it was terrible at the time, it's kind of smart. I see why they would do that and try to reintroduce people, even not just the Netflix, but even Trek proper, because it's a bunch of kids are going to get introduced to Star Trek this Christmas. They played the long con on us, Dave.
Yeah, I don't think... See, the bad part about it is I don't think it was a plan initially.
Yeah. So we say. Kaiser's Star Trek. I don't know.
What?
I was trying to make a Kaiser Sose joke, they had a plan all along and we just didn't see it.
Uh-huh.
But it didn't. Yeah. Didn't really work. Jubal Voyagerly.
Are you going from The Usual Suspects to Firefly now?
Wait, Jubal Early. What was the guy's name in was his name before? Jubal something, right? But Jubal Early's from Firefly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, yeah, Firefly.
Kevin Spacey.
His name was Jubal. It was Jubal. That's why I went Jubal Early. I think so.
I haven't watched The Usual Suspects in years.
But maybe Firefly too. Like, you know, the long con was to make a like financially unsuccessful movie. They canceled it.
Jesus. I miss Effie.
Just because she's comprehensible.
No, because she laughs at a lot of stuff I say.
Sorry, man. Higher bar here. I've known you too long.
No.
Half the shit you say is like already pre-processed in my brain.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny when you get to know new people. All your jokes work on them.
Yeah,
you know, it's great. But your oldest friends know, like, you got to get at the sweet meat of the jokes.
Yeah, no, like, it's weird. Like, I was just talking to Effie about this the other day because, like, I don't know if you guys are listening to our original series rewatch, but this is Effie's first time.
You better be.
Yeah, we're doing it on this feed, so. But yeah, Effie has never watched any of this stuff, but she has been listening to my other show, DC on Screen, since, like, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, and we've been friends for a really long time, so I'm just, like, kind of shocked that she still laughs as hard as she does at my weird-ass jokes. But then again, like, I was telling her the other night, I was like, just wait until we get to about TNG Season 2, and you're just going to be like, I'm so sick of this bastard. You're going to be like, let me guess, dick joke.
Yeah, no one ever expects those dick jokes, though. They're always weird and off-putting.
Yeah, well, that's the best thing about it.
And yeah, I know you think that.
Well, I don't like a normal dick joke, you know?
Oh, I know.
Just like, dick. That's not funny.
Yeah.
But if there's like some kind of disturbing thing about it.
Yeah, you gotta have look at the dick from a different angle.
You gotta see which way is the breeze, you know, gyrating that throbbing vein.
There it was.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the news, because you said you had a ton of news because we've been not trekking for a while here.
Yeah.
So tell me the news, and I have not. Yeah, it's funny. I do multiverse news, and when there is Star Trek news that bubbles to like whatever Variety or whatever, like we do cover it, but yeah, I haven't heard much. It's been quiet.
Yeah. Has it?
I feel like it's been quiet.
Oh, that explains all these blank pieces of paper.
But you tell me, bud.
All right, we're gonna start off with Discovery, and a lot of people have been concerned because it's been well known that they didn't know this was going to be the last season, and then Paramount was like, "Hey, by the way, this is your last season." So,
I thought they did know.
No, well,
did they lie to us?
No, they didn't. No, we've talked about this. When they had shot it all, and they thought this was not their last season, and then Paramount was like, "Hey, by the way, this is your last season, but y'all can have some more money and go and like wrap it up." Okay. So like they gave them more money to go and do reshoots, basically.
Okay. That's better than nothing. But like, yeah, I for some reason I thought we talked about them having known, but okay, yeah, gotcha.
So Sonequa, Martin Green, and the executive producer Michelle Paradise were in Brazil at the CCXP, and they were talking about this upcoming season. Michelle Paradise says this season will be a lot of action, a lot of adventure, a lot of fun. We will also, as we always do in Star Trek Discovery, explore meaningful themes as well, the family on board Discovery, the community, all those sorts of things. We did a bit of a tonal shift this season while still maintaining what Discovery is. Season 5 is going to be a wonderful mix. The DNA of Discovery always has those serialized stories over the course of a season. This season, the nature of that serialized story allows us to have more episodic adventures. So I think people are really going to dig it. There are some very cool adventures. Some really fun episodes, she says.
Sounds like they're shifting to follow the
Strange
lead
New
of
Worlds.
Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, I get do what works and do what Star Trek is, but I guess I want Discovery to continue being itself. And I know it feels like she's saying, don't worry, we're staying ourselves, but we're changing a lot.
That is what it sounds like.
It sounds like, don't worry, there is need for concern.
Yeah. And she talks about how they're going to get bigger and better than ever before. Keeps bringing up the AR wall. They love bringing up that AR wall, man. She talked a lot about the new people. They're bringing in new people. Callum Keith Rennie is joining the main cast, playing Navarre, who is a Starfleet captain. Elias Tofexis and Eve Harlow have recurring roles, playing the main adversaries, La'ak and Mull. And they, sucked them off. But you know how they do. They're like,
sure,
oh, they're great actors. They just bring so much. They bring so much. I'm sure they're fine. Paradise said, we did not know going into season 5 that it would be our final season. We found out after we were done shooting the season, so thankfully Paramount Plus and CBS Studios gave us the ability to go back and shoot some additional scenes. So really at that point, it was about wrapping it up the best way and having it feel wonderful for all of the people who love Star Trek. And then Sonequa Martin Green says Michelle and the team put together an addendum shoot that Paramount Plus and CBS Studios allowed us to do, and so we went back and wrapped it up. When you see it, it is beautifully culminating. I really believe it was satisfying. It really ties up really well. And they debuted a clip that I sent you. Did you watch that on Facebook?
No, I didn't know you'd sent it to me.
I did. I sent it to you this morning.
Well, I'll watch it right now.
Okay. But by the way, they also said that Discovery will come out in April.
Okay, April.
So we've got a few months.
So that's the first thing?
Yeah.
Except for Prodigy, of course, coming back.
Well,
okay.
And a season we've already seen is coming back. Right. But
yeah. But then when are they bringing the second season? Are they waiting a year? Or
we don't know. It's sometime in 2024.
All right. I watched that clip.
Yeah. I thought it looked really cool. It does for me, it does a lot of what I love about Discovery, which in the clip there, she and Book are fighting these giant alien creatures who can cloak. And they did a lot of cool stuff with like the personal transporters and like meshing that into the choreography and what they were doing. One of the things I love about Discovery is that they always take like the technology in Star Trek and find a way to do it in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I tend to like go, Discovery's my least favorite. But then I see that clip and I'm like, oh man, I'm excited for Discovery.
Oh yeah. It seems like a lot of fun. It is a little like as Discovery tends to be, just kind of whiz bang action sometimes. I'm just hopeful. So it feels a little. I don't know what she was doing. In the clip, there's these monsters chasing them, alien life forms chasing them. But the way they huddled up at the end, it seemed like maybe they weren't actually like, I don't know. It didn't look like they were trying to kill them at the end. It looked like they were trying to wrangle them or something. I'm wondering if those things are more sentient than we're led to believe throughout the clip, or being controlled or something. But anyway, this looks like she's doing some sort of archaeology, looking at that hieroglyph or something, and it's just funny that it's like, yeah, we're action packed, but we're still doing Star Trek. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of a funny clip to me. Like, we're not here to fight a thing. We can't just be here to fight a thing, because that wouldn't be Star Trek. We're here to learn a thing. They're making us fight.
Right. And for me, like, watching the clip, it was just like, I realized how much MTV's The Challenge I've been watching. Because to me, it looked like Book was doing like the physical part of some challenge.
Totally.
While the person ran over and like tried to solve the puzzle.
Yes, absolutely. Like Survivor or whatever, like all those shows. This totally feels that way.
Yeah.
That's funny.
They have expanded the challenge so much that there's like a version on exclusive to Paramount Plus, and a version exclusive to MTV. That's the normal one, and a version exclusive to CBS that airs the next day on Paramount Plus. And then they also did like Challenge Argentina, Australia, Brazil, a whole bunch of. And then
when you
say
like a version,
championship.
I see a version of those things. Is it like Is it like the same people, just different? Showing different content?
When I say, okay, so like Challenge All Stars is specifically on Paramount Plus, and it's all like it's usually people we haven't seen very much of, but recently. And they do like a truncated season that's kind of heavy in some ways, but then also kind of light for certain people. But they also do the normal MTV, The Challenge, and you just never know what they're going to do. Like, it's a totally different season. And then they have CBS, which is The Challenge USA. And that came out of, they did USA, Brazil, Australia, and all these different places had their own versions of the challenge.
Right.
That culminated in the World Championship.
It's different challenges, different. Completely. Yes. Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Now, there are other people who come back and, go between
them or whatever. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
But we're not it's not like a different version as in like a different edit or a different. Yeah, I was just trying to understand. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. Okay. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But they're kind of killing me.
Yeah, that's
a bit much.
For a person like you who's a bit of a completist, that seems like torture. Because I could see liking that show. I watch shows like that. But it always kills me how much content they put out. I enjoy like The Bachelor from time to time.
Yeah.
A season here or there. But like the fact that it's like 2 hours every week sometimes, I'm like, what the hell? Why?
Prodigy season 2, that's been completed. They're just waiting to air it now.
Hopefully they'll do that sooner than later. I feel like animated shows, just like most shows, tend to wait a year or two. Like animation has such a long tail to it. But since it's completed, I hope that they'll play season 1 on Netflix and then pretty quickly get out season 2. Because I don't know, kids today, man, the shorter attention spans and stuff. I feel like, especially the Netflix model of dropping everything at once, like stuff leaves the consciousness so quick. You're like, oh, whoa, that show came out at some point, but it's just that thing where like if a show comes out over 13 weeks, you have like however many weeks are left in a year till it comes back. But if you see it all at once, it's like, oh, 52 more weeks until I see that again. I don't know. Yeah, I think it would be a smart move for them to get it out sooner than later.
Michelle Yeoh is talking about Star Trek Section 31.
Sure she is.
Yeah. She said they asked if she had started prepping for Section 31. She said, I just came back from Toronto, and what does that tell you? We are definitely prepping. We are definitely going full steam ahead. And thank you. Section 31 is very special to me. I'm so happy we're doing it. And it's going to begin filming Monday, January 29th.
Wow.
Tawny Newsome, who plays Mariner on Lower Deck, she's talking a lot about Starfleet Academy. And by the way, they are back to doing voice work for Lower Decks. And she's back in the writer's room because she's a writer on Starfleet Academy. And they've been writing again for about a month. And she said, she was talking about the atmosphere of the writer's room. She says, we truly have the most fun group of people. Our showrunners really assembled just a delightful room of lovely people. I don't know how they did it because Hollywood is full of psychopaths. And they really managed to find some sweeties who love Star Trek. I've been having a blast, and I think that the audience is going to love the show. She says, it is aimed at a younger audience, a younger generation. I mean, it's the Academy. All things are possible. Also, I like this era. I don't know what era, though. I like the promise of this show because so often we don't get to see what it's like when you're not quite a fully formed Starfleet officer yet. All of our Starfleet officers have to be so good already. What I think has been so fun about Lower Decks is that we've gotten to see people on the less great ships. So I just think that kids in their academy phase, that's some of the exciting stuff for me. What do you like when you are a teenager who is still figuring this out on the path to becoming these great Starfleet officers? And yeah, that's always something that I've wanted to see more of when you look back at episodes like TNG's Tapestry, where we see like very irresponsible Jean-Luc Picard getting stabbed to the heart because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's one of the reasons teen stories have like a good pull in general is because there's so much change. You're so much like an adult, but you still have so much to learn,
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you can also throw a lot of common sense out the window because those characters don't have common sense. You're like watching the thing, you're like, stupid. Why would they do that? They're dumb and young.
Yes, indeed.
She says, I do feel like the Starfleet Academy will appeal to fans. I will say that there are some people in that room, I might be one of them, that are real Canon hound dogs. They got some real Canon heads in there with very intense conversations about keeping the Star Trek of it feeling really Star Trekky. So I hope that'll make everyone who loves Star Trek happy, because it makes me happy. I love being a deputy Canon cop. And she talks a little bit about her past. She says, I've done sketch comedy before. I have never done a narrative room. I worked at the Second City for many years before I worked in TV, and we write all of our own material there. I've done a lot of little okay, we are assembling a punch-up room for this draft of this thing. I've only ever worked in comedy. I've never worked on an hour-long drama, not even as an actor, so that's different for me. And someone told me that I'm the first Star Trek cast member to be in on the writing staff of a show. That's such an honor.
Wow.
And I'm going to be thinking about that. It's rare that you get to be a first in something that you really care about. Yeah, I am excited about that. I didn't realize she'd worked for Second City.
I didn't either. Hey, it makes sense.
And I know, when you see her social media posts and behind the scenes stuff, she's funny.
Oh, yeah.
She is good at, improv and, ad-libbing and stuff.
I mean, and just being from Lower Decks, she's clearly funny and clearly knows what she's doing with comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's neat that she's the first. I'm surprised. I'm surprised we didn't get any other, I guess involved in the room is different. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, Jonathan Frakes is very involved in the directing side.
Yeah, and we had Nimoy working on the story in some of the movies and stuff.
Yeah,
Shatner did too.
Yeah, I remember them sort of trading back and forth where they were arguing. Well, he got to do it.
Yeah, Shatner. That's why he directed 5 is because he pitched a little baby fit because their contract stated that. Anything Nimoy gets to do, he gets to do. So,
that's so stupid.
For Star Trek 5, he's like, my contract says I can direct if I want to, and I wanna. All right, Bill. Jesus Christ.
Just so glad he did. We got Star Trek 5, widely known as the best Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be fair to Shatner, I like his original idea better. I'm not saying it would have been good. I'm saying I like it better than what was presented. But they had a ton of interference for the studio. They had a ton of problems with the special effects teams who were all super, super busy doing all the other damn movies that year because it came out summer of '89.
Mm-hmm.
That's like in Indiana Jones. You're talking about Batman. You're talking about all the Ghostbusters too. There were tons of movies that came out, big tentpole year. And they got stuck with a really low rent effects studio.
Gotcha.
Lots of stuff didn't go well on that set.
Sure.
In that production. Do you remember us talking about Nicholas Meyer and the Khan miniseries, Ceti Alpha 5?
Yeah. Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I think we did talk about how they've changed it over and it's going to be an audio drama. It's going to be a podcast now.
Yes, I remember talking about that.
But finally we're getting an update on that. Nicholas Meyer, who by the way is 77, and that will be very evident in a second. He says, it's now being worked on as a radio play. 9 or 10 half-hour episodes. I guess the thinking is, if it's successful, then we can go back to making it something on film. No, it's not, buddy. I don't think that's going to be the thinking. He was talking to Portal 47. He says, this is a show, all I can tell you about it, and I have no wish to be indiscreet, that has a kitchen filled with cooks. And because of the strikes, though, he says, whatever timeline we had went out the window some months ago. But they are still working on it. And on the format, he says, I really love radio plays. And I'll tell you why I think they're cool. I believe that all great artistic media, with one arguable exception, rely for their success on something that they leave out. Paintings do not move. Music possesses no intellectual content. Words are just code on a page. It is the imaginary contribution of the audience that puts this all together. When I'm looking for a movie, I'm looking for what I want to leave out. Radio is perfect because it's all your imagination. Imagination is perfect because it doesn't need to be trained. I'm not sure I agree with him about music not having intellectual content.
Yeah, that was a weird Weird barb at music, bud.
Yeah.
I was like, what does that even mean? No intellectual. Like, if you're talking about instrumental music, then like maybe there's no like direct communication. You have to build in your own meaning, right? Like that. I think that's what he means. But like, it's very unspecific to say music has no intellectual content.
Yeah. I think maybe he's just like. I think he means like bare music with no lyrics.
Right, instrumental.
Yeah, just is devoid of a singular like pointed message.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, but his point is well taken. I think that's an interesting way to think about art and an interesting way to think about movies too, because it is often said that like it's the things you don't show. You know, it's that Hitchcockian thing. It's the Jaws thing. It's the thing people always talk about with like the suspense of not showing something is so much more interesting and intriguing, and it particularly works for horror and for thrillers and such. But like, I think it's sort of true of everything. And now that we can show everything on screen, thinking about that and making decisions around what you don't show is an interesting way to think about making movies.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've long held that Batman the Animated Series was one of the best, most cleverly adult series ever. And when they stopped doing that show and they moved Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett over to animated movies that were PG-13 and sometimes are, they got way less interesting, even though they could do way more, because they could get away with doing way more, and they didn't stretch that muscle of like, how can we hint at something off screen? And it just like took away a lot of the drama, and also made me feel icky because Bruce Timm likes drawing nipples. All right, so bear with me. We don't normally talk about this stuff because I genuinely don't care. But I am building a case to something here. Not really a case, but just like pointing out some stuff.
Build that case.
That we're going to talk about in a minute. Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks pick up 15 Saturn Award nominations. All right, and they're for big things, you know, like actual actor things, and you know how like a lot of these things will be like best forehead ridge or something.
Right. Yeah.
They're getting a lot of award noms, and I don't want to go into all the for reasons, but then Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks were nominated for Best Series Critics Choice Awards. So on February 4th, 2024, the Saturn Awards are going to be live streamed on Electric Now, and the Critics Choice Awards are going to be on the CW January 14th. Okay. If you guys care about all that. They're up against a lot of stiff competition, you know, like Mandalorian and Succession and all this other stuff, so they probably won't win. But, I mean, you know, they got Loki in here, for Christ's sake. They're not for Best Drama Series. I mean,
those are some darlings.
Come on, man. And Lower Decks has been in the Critics' Choice Awards before, and they lost to What If last year. But my point is, they're making waves. Yeah. They're making waves for sure. It's not just like a lot of Star Trek fans, and I feel that way myself, feel like Star Trek is kind of shit on and ignored by mainstream.
It's not, it just doesn't have the same footprint that other things have. Yeah. I mean, it's not owned by Disney, and Disney just like has this stranglehold on like what is pop culture. And so Star Trek, while it's still huge and has so many shows out now and everything, it still feels like it's not getting the same sort of footprint, I guess is the best word, as in the culture. I often get really frustrated with, I really want to like go to, like I see these Star Wars, like, you know, go to Star Wars Land or whatever it is at Disney, you know, like where you can go through the cantina and you can sit under the Millennium Falcon and all that stuff. I'm like, I really wish Star Trek had that. Like I would go for sure to those things. Now that I'm an adult, they had the Star Trek experience when I was a kid, and I couldn't afford. My family never went to Las Vegas,
Mine either.
So I never got to go to that. but now that I'm an adult, I would absolutely make a pilgrimage every few years to something like that. But like, just doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, even that Star Wars hotel is going
Yeah.
under. They're changing it. It's going away.
Well, I heard that it was crazy expensive at first, and then I heard it was getting cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah, it was like $6,000 for like a night or something like that.
But it sounds amazing and sounds cool. You like living out in like if they had Star Trek and you like went there and got to like live like you were a Starfleet officer for a day or something and do tasks. I would totally do that. And I would probably pay a lot of money to do that, but I couldn't very often because I'm not a rich man. But like, I would do it because it sounds amazing. And
I would be happy that it existed, but still not be able to go.
But the thing is, like, it just always annoys me that like you have that stuff for other stuff and you don't have it for Star Trek. I've been getting ads on my feed for something called The Empire Strips Back.
Oh.
Like a strip tease show going on in Atlanta right now.
Okay.
And it's all Star Wars characters.
Yeah.
And I was like, why doesn't Star Trek have something like that? And it literally wasn't like, I want to see strippers.
Right.
Or strip teases.
It's just like, why is it not popular enough to have that?
I was. I found myself like, it wasn't that my kink is women in Starfleet uniforms. It's not that, guys, I promise.
Yeah.
It's that I don't even have the option.
Yeah.
It's about freedom, Dave.
Right.
It's about choice.
Yeah, I get it.
It's nothing specific to me. It's not that I have the desire, you see. You see, Dave.
I don't, but I kind of get what you're getting at.
What's next in the news?
Yeah. All right. Another thing we don't normally talk about, but Eagle Moss, they ended their like diecast Starship collection, but they went under. But Fan Home is another subscription-based pop culture collections company, and they just announced that they're going to be doing Star Trek diecast starships. They are promising an incredible fleet of impressively detailed new diecast Star Trek ships launching in the third quarter of 2024. So that stuff is coming. I suspect they won't pick up where Eagle Moss left off. I suspect they'll just like, now here's the 1701 and the 1701D again and all that shit.
Oh, I'm sure.
But, that is at least some good news because Playmates is no longer going to be doing their figures. They just came out of nowhere, and it wasn't out of nowhere for people who pay attention. But I mean, they did like 3 next gen characters. They did 2 Discovery characters, and Dow, Murph, Gwen, Zero, and Jankum Pog from Prodigy. But they didn't. So they won't be releasing a Rock Talk or a Hologram Janeway. They did say that they're going to continue with like the role play stuff and the starships. But we've talked about this before about how like Star Trek doesn't have a solid retail presence for kids.
Yeah.
And now we find that, we see that the Playmates toys are now going to discontinue their figures. They cited low sales. Well, I mean, I liked the figures enough to buy them because they still, like, they were in the same scale as their old 90s figures, but they were also kind of something in between.
In what way?
Where it was like, they added more articulation, but I felt like they looked less like the characters in the old 90s figures. But it was like they were trying to straddle the line between like the classic line and for like the old collectors, and then like trying to be a little updated for new collectors, but they just didn't. They're not great figures. And they also like went Discovery, Next Gen, and Prodigy, and then they did like 3 figures from the movies. 1 that never got released, or no, 2 that never got released, and then 1 that did with an update. And it's just like, they just like they were trying too hard to be both new and old, and they didn't succeed at either.
Well, it's that it sounds again like it's sort of what we were talking about before, where it's that Star Trek being sort of the the lesser of these the less popular of these genre shows, where like you get Star Wars, you can get yourself a whatever different levels of quality figure for like every character in the verse, even if they're just like some.
I want Star Trek to have the freaking Star Wars Black Series. That's what I want.
I don't know the Black Series, but
is like just, I think it's Hasbro that does them, and they're just like fantastic 6-inch figure, great articulation, usually really on point with the likenesses, and they have like every damn character you ever didn't even know that was in Star Wars. Like I want to buy these figures, and I'm not a Star Wars guy.
Right, they're just cool figures.
They're just so cool. I was in Ross the other day doing some Christmas shopping, and they had a Chewbacca and an old like classic Princess Leia and a Chewbacca, and they were $5.99 each. Yeah, that Chewbacca that Matt just pulled up on his screen there. It was $5.99, and I wanted so bad to buy it.
Yeah.
And I want something so bad like that for Star Trek. But like I'm trying to like in this episode bring up to you like and present a point about like all the like what is kind of wrong with the Star Trek brand because of our big story. By the way, Super 7. So like we're dealing with like $12.99 figures that just got discontinued from Playmates. That's what they retailed for, is $12.99. Super 7 have been doing very, very detailed, like 7-inch figures. I think they're 7-inch, that are like $50 or $60 that have several like different heads and all these different hands and accessories and stuff. They are discontinuing as well. Meanwhile, XO6 seems to be doing well. They sell out all of their Star Trek waves, and they're having to restock. They just restocked, but they're highly detailed, expensive ass figures for Richies. Yeah. Like, oh my God. I can't spend $200 on a damn Star Trek figure.
Well, and is this the case you're building, that like they're Star Trek's making things for people of means, but not things for?
They're not doing well at getting their brand out there to the general audience.
Yeah, exactly.
They're doing it for like adult collectors who are already like super fans.
Yes, and I think that is sort of, I agree with you there. Like that is something that is the Star Trek brand in general. And it's what I've been saying.
I know
forever, is this like idea that they aren't feeding the system. You know, they're not like doing content for new fans. And now I think they are. They're starting to with Strange New Worlds and Prodigy. Is something you can watch and not know anything and just get into. But like a lot of stuff and they were trying, I think, that with Discovery. They were trying to walk this line between like, hey, it's a flashy new sci-fi show, but it's almost like Star Trek is so far, there's so much of it, it feels like daunting to get into, and it has a reputation for being slow or boring or whatever. And so, yeah, it's a tough thing, but I think they're doing a good job now with some of the newer outings. I really do think with like I said, Strange New Worlds and Prodigy are great ways to bring people in. Yeah,
and I hope that's the case. Last piece of news before we get into the big news. The final piece of news.
So
this is building up to the last news bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, you warned me.
There's something coming.
I forgot the tease of this episode was that all Star Trek was at risk. And then I forgot for an hour while we talked about all these other small stories.
Yeah. Well, that's why I keep saying, is like, we're building to something here.
Yeah. The tension.
You know, they asked Chris Pine, hey, are they veering, do you know if Paramount is veering away from the Kelvin verse? And he says, not that I know of. And they asked if he's seen a script, and he says, of course not. He's been very frustrated over all this. The latest report from Variety said that Paramount had writers, quote unquote, fine-tuning the script with hopes of getting the film back into pre-production following the double strikes. Big news, though, came out yesterday, and we've been hearing rumors that Paramount's talking to different people about mergers.
Okay.
Including Disney Plus, but they are officially meeting with Warner Brothers Discovery.
Okay.
And that's terrifying for me. But I'll just read it, what it says here, and then get into that. The latest round of deal buzz, as reports, they're in early discussions with a potential merger with Warner Brothers Discovery. It was first reported by Axios. The Hollywood trades and business press have confirmed early talks are underway, with Paramount Global CEO Bob Bakish meeting with Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav on Tuesday to discuss a deal. Zaslav has also spoken to Sherry Redstone, who owns a controlling stake in Paramount Global. All reports indicate that these are early talks with no agreement in place at this time, but the CEO discussion took up several hours on Tuesday, and Warner Brothers has already hired bankers to explore a deal. As the bigger player, Warner Brothers Discovery would be the buyer, although at this time it isn't clear if it would be a traditional merger or involve a buyout of Sherry Redstone's National Amusements, which holds the majority of Paramount's controlling shares. Redstone had sought a deal with one of the big tech giants, holding talks with Apple, Amazon, and Netflix earlier this year. A deal with WBD could be easier than one with Paramount's other media rivals due to WB not owning a broadcast network. According to Variety, the recent news that Skydance was looking into buying out Redstone's controlling shares pushed Warner Brothers Discovery into action. Valued at $24 billion and $10 billion respectively, a merger between Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount would bring scale to compete against the likes of Disney, valued at $167 billion, Comcast $168 billion, and Netflix $214 billion. And it would there would be synergies between Paramount Global, Warner Brothers Discovery, combining news, CBS News with CNN, and CBS Sports with Turner Sports. In the case of Star Trek, a deal of this kind would likely see the current Paramount Plus Star Trek library of legacy and new shows move to this newly merged streaming service that would be Max and Paramount Plus, by the way, merging. So all of this is just kind of, the rest of it's kind of obvious, but my fear is, I do DC on Screen. David Zaslav has been problematic. He has canceled movies. He has, brought the axe down on streaming shows that weren't making their money. If they're too expensive, he wants to cut them. As my understanding is, Star Trek is one. It's looking good with nominations. It's broken the top 10 several times this year in the top 10 in streaming. But as I understand it, Paramount Plus has still not made money.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think the Star Trek shows are the most expensive, and we've already seen Paramount cut Prodigy. They're the most expensive things that they make on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I am afraid if this merger goes through, which we'll have more than a year before that even happens, it's not going to probably really impact anything currently in production for a minute, because it'll probably take several months. Even if they do come up with a deal, it'll take several months for the courts to decide it's fair and equitable and all that shit. It's not a monopoly and whatever. But I am just very concerned. David Zaslav, I think he gets a lot of shit. And don't get me wrong, I do think he's pure evil. But I also think he's pretty savvy. And he does want to build up the big IPs. Okay. And, yes, he was responsible for Batgirl getting shelved.
Right.
But that was that was a project that was underway before he even got there. And it was a project that was designed to follow up on an ending of The Flash that wasn't going to carry through anymore.
Right.
And it was from another regime. And it was also shot specifically for HBO Max, which means that there was no way they were going to make their money back by putting it in theaters. It was going to look awful in theaters. And also it was going to be set in a universe that they were no longer following. I do like that he says that he put James Gunn in charge of DC Studios and said, "You're in charge. You make the decisions. You don't have to answer to me on creativity."
Right.
So if they were to merge and he was for some reason in charge of Star Trek, I would hope that he would do the same with Alex Kurtzman or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
And then like not touch it. My fear is that he would like, while he did that, he would also be like, now let's start chopping it down. Like let's get these Star Trek shows cut down so they're not so damn expensive, and they're not only for Max or whatever it was.
And we've seen what's happened with DC. I mean, you more intimately than I. We talk about it a lot in Multiverse News. Just the idea that like they just killed the DCEU without a lot of fanfare.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's just sort of going out with like these whimpers of movies that like people don't know how to care about because they don't know whether, like they've also done a really terrible job about like telling us if this new universe, like what's going to be in it and what's not and all this stuff. It seems like James Gunn has been bouncing back and forth, and it just seems like they're trying to sort of half-heartedly support the ending of this big franchise so they could reboot it. And like if they did that to Star Trek, that'd be really, really terrible to watch like a bunch of final seasons that feel half-assed or feel unconnected or feel like, is this even canon to what they're going to be doing next? You know, like, so yeah, the idea of someone like that taking the reins of Star Trek, and while, like you said, while they may end up in a great place, James Gunn's DC universe may be amazing in a few years.
Yeah.
It's making a lot of pain for DC fans for the last 2 years, and is going to continue, you know, for a little while until Superman Legacy comes out. But I worry that would be really bad for Star Trek and really bad for fans and really bad for this show and really bad, you know, like it'd be really like if there was if we're sitting there watching we finally got the first season of Section 31, but they're never making any more. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that happening would be like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah. So I'm worried about that. On the other hand, Paramount, really all they have is, I mean, they have a lot of TV stuff, like a lot of great TV IPs, but like their big tentpoles are Star Trek and Mission Impossible. And they have fumbled Star Trek in the movies so much. I am interested to see what David Zaslav would do, because I feel like if they did do a merger, he would be like, no, we're going to go into production really soon. We're going to get this going. I'm just afraid of the streaming, but I was already there. Like, I'm afraid of just Warner Brothers Discovery's shitty executives and how they've been treating artists the last couple of years. But at the same time, like, if the James Gunn deal is indicative of how they're going to treat other artists and what they're trying to move towards, because let's be honest, Walter Hamada really had some shitty plans for DC and was not delivering. Like, so this is all stuff that Gunn has been like, well, no, I'm going to shoot my shot. We're going to just kind of get away from this. It's hard to necessarily equate it, but it's also like, because of I've been burned so much by Warner Brothers, I really don't want them touching Star Trek. And I would almost rather, like, yes, let's do Apple. Yeah, let's do Disney.
Apple having Star Trek would be amazing.
But
first of all, those shows seem like they don't care if they make money.
Yeah.
And they want the same audience that Apple wants, which is like that we talked about earlier, that like high-end person who can spend a lot of money and stuff. If they started putting out like Star Trek branded iPhones and stuff that were like $4,000, there are tons of people that would pay for that communicator sound. You know what I mean? Like it's silly, but it's true. And it also would be maybe the worst world for the thing we were talking about earlier with like giving us good entry points. Cause I feel like Apple is this thing where like all the shows are amazing on that streaming service. Everything I've watched on there is amazing, but it all like feels like no one else is watching it. Kind of like Star Trek. Maybe it's a good fit. I don't know.
On the other hand, like, I think my dream might be Disney.
Sure.
Because if they get the Star Wars IP, if they got the Star Wars IP, I mean the Star Trek IP, you know they're going to do a Star Trek versus Star Wars thing. They'll figure out a way. Like, you've got alternate realities, you got wormholes, they'll figure out a way to merge those IPs. And if it's in their best interest to make Star Trek as big as Star Wars, like, they will find a way to do it.
Well, it would be in their best interest to do that. The problem is, how do you do that culturally? How do you make that shift? And they've done it with Star Wars, but they did it in a way that also kind of cannibalized Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of the oldest fans now hate what they're doing.
But they're always going to.
Well, I mean, maybe.
They hated what Lucas did with the prequels.
Some do, some don't.
Yeah, some do and some don't. But yeah.
But yes, like it tends to be like whatever the new thing is, the newer generation's going to enjoy it more than the people who are like set in their ways about what they love. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough because also, you know, I think there's this thing that these big like content mills tend to do, which is just like, and I think even now it's happening with Star Trek too. Like you kind of cannibalize what you're creating, cannibalize the content that came before by overusing it and not creating new stories that are interesting. And I think that's why I'm really excited about Strange New Worlds, particularly, because there were episodes that we did our on Multiverse News, which you should all go check out. We did our top 5 shows of this year. And Strange New Worlds made it, but Picard didn't for me. And I was like, man, which one do I want? Because I knew I wanted a Star Trek at least on there. But like I was like, I just gotta say, like, I liked Picard. It was amazing to see that ending. Yeah. And it felt like it's utilizing every bit of my fandom to show these characters on screen again. But Strange New Worlds had episodes, which I can't remember the name of right now, but like the one like the one where the Doctor kills that Klingon at
under
the
the cloak of war or
something.
And
like that and the Rhapsody.
Space Rhapsody.
Rhapsody episode. Those episodes that like feel like they're injecting newness into Star Trek in a way that like they could. Now I'm excited for them to reference again M'Benga. You know, like M'Benga is now a character that like I liked him before. Now I'm incredibly interested. You know, like it is so hard. Making the Doctor like a badass killer is not is something any show could do to make him kind of interesting. But they did it in a way that makes me like I am so excited by this character. They could make an M'Benga show where he has to balance his like whatever, like his ability to do terrible like things and his ability to be a doctor, and like how is that like I would watch that show, you know. That one episode produced for me a character that I will forever care about. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to make episodes and seasons and movies that like create something new. You know what I mean? Even if it's with that IP, infuse it with new life. And I think that Star Trek and all of these content mills that sort of are creating tons of content, every piece of content you make cheapens all the other content. And so like, if it's not also elevating at the same time, it's like you're using the resource, but you're not putting anything back. You have to like use it for what its potential is, but then also put it back. It's like we talk about with Voyager all the time. Voyager used the Borg to the point where they just used them up. They just felt like no one cared anymore. The Borg aren't scary anymore because you use them every episode. If they had done that while simultaneously building up some other threat that really worked, I don't think we were ever really scared of species 8472. Is that right? Species. It never felt scary to us. It was scary to the Borg, right? Like it didn't feel like if they had used up the Borg, but they had presented us with some new villain or new like species or new worlds that we were like that. But Voyager, even though it's out in the Delta Quadrant with all these new opportunities, I'm not saying they didn't try. Obviously, they had other species that just didn't hit as hard, but they didn't infuse Star Trek with newness to the point that I'm like, I'm excited to know about that species going forward. You know what I mean? Yeah. Instead, they utilized it without putting something new in it.
The Hirogen or whatever they were called were pretty cool, but they're not memorable.
Right. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that's pretty cool, but none of it I'm like, the next series of Star Trek better touch on what happened to the whatever.
Hirogen
what happened to the Kazon? Like, I don't really care.
They were just like Klingons who didn't wash their hair.
Yeah.
They had like dirt clumps or something in their hair. It was weird.
But yeah, so I just think that all that to be say, I think that like so many of these people that are bean counters are just looking at it going like, all right, we got the content.
Mm-hmm.
We paid for the content. We paid for the IP. Now let's just use it up. Let's just send it through the grinder. And like, you just got to give artists the chance to really create and like create newness and spin off new ideas and new things into those universes.
Yeah. I am concerned. Like, I think I would rather it go with WBD when you're talking about like the future of filmmaking and the future of content creation.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like, if it went with Disney, it's like, Jesus God, that's another thing Disney freaking owns.
Yeah.
And
I don't think it would. I hear you about the Star Wars thing. I think if they got it, it would be like it would always be the second cousin to everything.
It might be.
And not get the focus. I think we need it to be separate from Disney. I really do.
But I also just have such a bias against Warner Brothers because I don't feel like it's interesting because like I brought up the toys earlier. I mean, I want to talk about that because I'm interested in that, but at the same time, like I kind of started seeing this like conversation kind of emerging for us with this merger shit because, Warner Brothers has a great relationship with McFarlane Toys. The DC Multiverse figures are like the number one selling action figure and has been for years. Like, and he just like, Todd actually takes like, and he gets a lot of shit for like reusing certain parts, but it's like always usually stuff that you don't notice, like shoes and legs or something. But like, he does so much like
shoes and legs, like
half
the figure.
Well, yes, sometimes, but he does so much, so many new molds for like head molds and they do characters you would never think they did freaking Wave Rider. Nobody even knows who Wave Rider is, but the way they get away with doing characters like Wave Rider that they're like super interested in seeing on the shelf is, you're going to get like 15 Jokers that are made up of just different, matches. Like you'll have like, here's a Joker that has like a totally new face and jacket, but his legs are the Arkham Asylum Joker. And they also do like specialty paints for, the diehard collectors who are just not going to be able to stop getting these because they're slightly different. For something like Star Trek, and McFarlane used to have those figures, and right when Discovery came out, and then all of us, they teased a Michael Burnham that looked great, and I never saw it anywhere. I don't think it ever came out. They teased the Discovery Phaser, and then it never came out. But they did do a Kirk and Picard, and I have both of those. They are pretty damn fantastic. And, I just like, when you're talking about like a $20 to $25 figure, that's a pretty good price point for the amount of articulation, for the amount of likeness, and like, also you're looking at like, if you're doing original series characters, those pants are all the same. You don't have to spend money making new molds for legs, or sometimes even uniforms. All of that to say, like, Warner Brothers has a really good track record of putting out good merchandise for their big IPs. Like, just doing Christmas shopping, like, there's so much Harry Potter shit that I was able to get for my sister.
There would be a lot of use of it in that way, use of it for merchandise. And there is something to be said that like the merchandising aspect does feed back into that like creative process, not only the creative process of making the shows, but like the fandom. Like if I can go down, like, I remember the Orville came out. I really wanted an Orville shirt. And like, they didn't sell one. There just wasn't an Orville shirt.
Yeah.
In existence from an official source. I finally bought like a third-party Orville shirt off Etsy or something.
Right.
And like, it's wild to me that a show can exist. And I know that it's like, because it's not a wider IP, it's just a single show, there just isn't merch for it at all. Like, I really wanted an Orville ship, and there was no Orville ship to be had at the time. I don't know if there is now, but I was really into that show when it first came out, and like, there's just nothing existed for it.
Yeah.
But then there's shows like, you know, it's just it's so weird. And I guess you know a lot more about this stuff than I do, because I don't follow. I don't really buy a lot of toys, or I'm sorry, collectibles.
I mean, I don't care what
I know
you call
you don't
them.
care.
I
just joking. It felt dismissive when I say I don't buy a lot of toys. It sounds like I'm being the asshole, but
people say that shit to me all the time. I'm like, oh, action figures. I'm like, dude, you can call them dolls or whatever. I don't give a shit. Like,
I know. I'm just joking. I love the stuff. I love seeing it. And now that I have a house, there are a few places that I want to like fill with that stuff.
Yeah.
Now that I have space to do so, if people want to see Dave's house, it's years ago, but like the kind of setups you have there, go check out. What was that song called? It's good to be a geek.
Something like that.
It's yeah.
Was it under the garage? The garage?
I think so. Yeah. Or it was under me. Anyway, we should put it on YouTube. We should put it in the link in the show notes.
I'll do it. I'll put it in the link.
It's a. I got a bunch of people. I wanted a bunch of my head on different action figures singing, and I knew exactly where to go to get that done. And it was like, Dave, can I come to your house for a few hours? And I just filmed all these different action figures in just a few hours. It was awesome.
Yeah, it has grown since, but but yeah. Not only do I love ships, I love action figures. I collect DC and Star Trek, but I also I'll pick up a Star Wars every now and again. I get some, Ninja Turtles. A lot of different things. I've got a ton of Back to the Future now because of NECA, and but it also is like really interesting to me because I'd never really considered it as so much until Young Justice got canceled on Cartoon Network. It's since come back, and it might not come back again, but it was doing banging numbers in the ratings on Cartoon Network, and they still canceled it because too many girls liked the show. Boys weren't buying action figures from Young Justice.
Huh.
The demographics were girls, and they didn't think girls were going to buy the action figures, and so like it's really interesting to me.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's not like girls don't play with toys or dolls. Like, we call them dolls versus action figures, but there's no distinction really.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I know so many girls on Twitter who are like really into Star Trek and like buy action figures and have them on the shelves.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous distinction to have in 2023.
Oh, it wasn't in 2023. It was more like 2006 or 7.
Oh, okay.
Back then. But that was like one of those things that Greg Wiseman came out and started talking about, like, oh, well, this is why they canceled Young Justice.
Crazy. And it's crazy to think about that with like these big IPs like DC and Marvel, and like Star Trek and Star Wars, because I feel like those canons should be above that. Like, the entire thing, if you're making, obviously they've got to make money.
Yeah.
But you make money by making content that everyone loves, and everyone wants the bauble, or everyone wants no matter what you make, they're going to buy it because it's just like, it's the content that makes the stuff happen. And that's what we like, you hear the stories about like He-Man and stuff. Have you ever seen that these documentaries about
from the cell?
He-Man? Yeah.
The Toys That Made Us.
Toys That Made Us. Yeah. I think that's the one I'm thinking of. And it's just wild to listen to them talk about how like that show is literally just like it's just a commercial for toys. Like, that's all it is. And it sucks because it feel like DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek, all this stuff, you got to think about it more broadly as you're bringing new kids in, and you have to make the kids care about the thing. It's almost like indoctrinating them into a religion that you have to like. You got to go like it when they're kids, then you have to serve them well through their teen years with like stories that question things and stories that deepen your like thinking. And then as adults, you still have to have stuff that's for them so they can continue their fandom and continue their worship, as it were.
Yeah.
With their various iconography around their house. It really is like that, but it only works if the content is there.
Right.
Like, and so like, if a show is great and it's bringing in a lot of fans that are children, it may not be selling the toys, but it might be making them the fans that they're going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15. Like, they're going to keep watching these movies and go into your things and putting up those $4,000 replicas in their house because, like, you got them when they're young, and you got to, like, but it's about how well it serves you. And when these content stop serving us and start using up our fandom, it feels gross. And that's why all these discussions scare me, because it's these corporate overlords that only care about the bottom line that have to like make those decisions. Luckily, like you said with David Zaslav,
or Zaslav, I don't know.
At least he seems to, like, the DC of it all with James Gunn, at least he seems to be pushing in the direction of like, no, you guys just create good stuff. So like maybe the long term would be good on that. It does scare me though.
It scares me. Yeah, I get, I have lots of thoughts on this. When I was growing up, you would walk into a grocery store with your mother or your parent, and right after you walk in the book section, there's a comic book rack. And there are all these comic books. They don't have that anymore. And I was excited a few years ago when Walmart announced that they were going to be doing these like $5.99 books or something like that had like several stories from different comics. They were reprints of comics, and they would tell you like, oh, pick up this comic book or whatever. The only problem is like those books didn't carry over. You didn't find out what happened next. You had to actually go seek out a freaking comic book shop.
Right.
And then like place your order. And like, for me growing up, like I would go in and get like Classic X-Men, or X-Men Classic is what it was called. And that was a reprint of Uncanny X-Men from the 80s, but it was like 99 cents. And I could easily like, do some chores and get like $2 and go get a couple of issues when I went to the freaking Food World.
Right.
Or the Family Mart or something. And we just don't have that anymore. It's the same thing with like action figures. And now, like, bless them, Todd McFarlane is doing this thing called Page Punchers, where you get like an action figure and a comic book. And they have different versions of it. Of course, the comic book is inside of the damn plastic, so no kid can pick it up and get hooked, standing in the store waiting on their parents. And what was also bad is like on those like $5-6 editions of these, omnibus things that they had, they put them over by the cigarettes, like where like like away from like, or parallel to the counter, to the checkout. So like no kid is walking over there to like dig through them. They were just like crammed in there.
Yeah.
It's like, and this goes for Star Trek too, because like Walmart, Kmart, freaking Food World, all these places where I would like pick up Star Trek comics and get super invested even deeper through Extended Universe into Star Trek lore. So like, to me, like in the 90s was such a prime era for Star Trek, because Next Generation was huge and it was quality content. But they also had like, they had several different like monthly titles for Star Trek out. You could find action figures and they were like $3-4.
Yeah, and part of this,
they are not utilizing what they need. They're like, why isn't it working? Well,
well, I think you also have to consider the fact that like kids are also not getting physical media anymore like they used to. So you also have to think like these days the way to reach the kids is in their screens.
Yeah.
And like I guess something like Prodigy maybe getting towards doing that, but I still think that like Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough sell. Getting kids into a 45-minute drama, it has to be really difficult. And I just think about, like, when I was a kid, I hated Star Trek when I first saw it, because I was like 4 and my parents were watching a boring show where people were walking around talking about stuff. But then I was forced to watch it because we had one TV, one screen in our house. And so, like, everyone's sitting there and, like, I don't want to sit in my room by myself. So I'd go and sit and watch TV.
Yeah.
And, like, I didn't have a TV in my room or anything. So, like, I would watch, and I eventually got interested in a few of the characters, which led me to my love of Star Trek today. And it's just very strange to try to think about, like, how do you get kids down that pipeline nowadays, you know?
I would think, and I've been thinking about this for a little while, and as I understand it, there are, like, apps that are made for kids. They just have, like, you know, anytime the kid goes there, there's, like, new content up for like, you know, puzzles and different little, like, funny jokes and stuff. One of these companies, Paramount, DC, whoever, Marvel even could do it. I'd be surprised if they didn't. Could publish, like, little comic strips, daily comic strips. Like, they could do a little Prodigy or even a Strange New Worlds, like, Captain Pike and the crew go down and, like, oh, if you want to find out what's happening, check back tomorrow on your, like, kid app.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they're, like, you know, safe for the family. Then you can just go back and reprint them and into an omnibus later and sell them. You know,
it's also, part of it also is, like, how cheap you can do, like, animation and content creation now, because kids are watching, like, people do weird things on YouTube or, like, talk about. They're not as much watching. Like, I don't know any kids that are watching, like, shows even. Like, all the kids I know, my like, all the kids I know that are, like, under 10, they're watching, like, they're not even watching cartoons anymore. They're watching, like, Mr. Beast videos or whatever, and, like, Fail Army, and like just watching YouTube clips.
Is Fail Army still a thing?
Yeah.
Really? God, I haven't heard that in a few years.
Yeah, just like whatever's on YouTube. They're just watching YouTube clips of stuff.
Yeah.
And it just feels like when you were a kid, when we were kids, you get, like, sort of trained to watch TV. You get trained to, like, understand adult content because your parents are just watching it.
Right.
And you had to. But, like, and I'm not saying it's even necessarily important. I don't want to sound like I'm like, everyone needs to like what I liked, but, like, there's definitely something to, like, learning to appreciate an hour-long arc of a thing instead of just sitting on, like, swiping on TikTok or whatever, you know? And some of this is just, like, you know, raging at technology and the advancement that we can't really change.
I mean, by the way, you can say that kids are watching, you know, YouTube, and they are, and TikTok and shit. But every time I'm in Target or Walmart, which is a substantial amount, I'm seeing kids picking up freaking Baby Yodas. They're picking up Grogu's.
Sure.
They're picking up those toys. They're seeing Star Wars.
They are. And that I think is the Star Wars and Marvel content that's coming out that's, like, a little more tuned for kids. And that's the Disney thing. Like, parents are sitting down with their kids to watch that stuff. Like, I think those are the shows that are still that is still happening. But that's, I think, where Strange New Worlds could come in, because we're also following the religion you know, parallel there. People tend to be the religion their parents were.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, the content you get into, like, you got to have content that everyone can sit and watch. Sure, you got the adult class where they go and talk about the deep theology, and you got the kids class where they're coloring Jesus, but then everybody goes to church, this church service, and they watch, like, a guy play guitar for an hour or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, there's the thing that brings everyone together. There's the big service, the big tent service. And, like, that's what you got to have. And I think Strange New Worlds is that. Like, you know, there's some darker moments, but, like,
sure,
for the most part, I don't think there's anything on there you couldn't watch. I mean, like, you know, maybe the Mbenga episode's a little dark,
Yeah.
But like there are lots of episodes that you could just watch with your kids in the room, be like, I want to show you this show, and they can like sort of just get it, and like that gives me hope. But I think things like that's why Mandalorian's so genius. It's a slow paced Western drama, but they put a little puppet in the middle of it. You know what I mean? Like to make it like give something for the kids to pay attention to while the adults are watching the, you know, religious trauma this guy's going through.
Yeah. And that's always been like the pull of Star Wars, is just like, here's a big space thing, political space thing. It's the C-3PO and R2-D2 whistling and shit. Like, oh my god! Like,
yeah, exactly.
Look at them. It's like like a little cartoon Monty Python sketch in the middle of some big space opera.
Yeah. And I think that's the you know, acoustic guitar being strummed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That, like, even though the service might be a little boring for kids, they might have to learn to sit through some parts of the service. They're getting into the religion because they're like singing songs and clapping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's the analogy is honestly a little too appropriate.
Yeah.
It feels gross. I'm
just thinking about that Futurama where no fan has gone before. I bring it up, I feel like every episode. Like that's why they outlawed Star Trek, is because it became a religion and started like encroaching upon the power of the actual government.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. If only, man. If only.
Yeah, if only. I feel like Star Wars and Marvel are much closer to that at this point.
Yeah, and like, I'm sorry, but way less good like lessons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Star Trek really treats you to like real ethical like struggles and discussions, and like it's a little cerebral. I do think there's something to like just saying like Marvel and DC and Star Wars all have this sort of just like, be the valiant good guy, not the evil, you know, it's a good versus evil plot. Mm-hmm. Whereas Star Trek's a lot more like cerebral. So I don't know, maybe I'm being reminded of The Good Place. Did you watch The Good Place?
I want to, but I have not yet.
At one point they realize heaven is being sort of mismanaged.
Sure.
By bureaucratic good people. Like they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good. They're all good, but they can't make a decision or a change to save their life because like they go through lots of bureaucracy, and it's sort of this, and I can kind of see that with like the cerebral nature of Star Trek. Like you teach everyone about Star Trek, then you go like, well, we could make that decision, but is it like appropriately respecting all sides of this ethical issue? Let's discuss for a while before we make any decisions. And Cap's just like, nah, man, I stand up to bullies. Like that's what I do. Yeah. I could do this all day. I stand up to bullies. You know, it's this like the easy logic versus
bully.
You know what? I bully bullies. Yeah. I just punch kids on the playground who look like they might bully people.
Right. That kid's a little overweight and has a mullet. Get him.
It's like Minority Report bully. Like
the precogs.
Yeah.
That kid looks like he has a troubled home life. Beat the shit out of him.
Oh man.
That kid's arm has a cigarette burn. Get him. He's gonna take it out on that kid. On that little kid.
We misread all the signs.
Yeah, it's just become an episode of or that movie Mean Creek. You know?
No, I don't know that movie.
That was like an independent movie. It won a bunch of awards. Had Josh Peck, you know, the kid from Drake and Josh. He was like the fat kid, but like they made him into like, I don't know, like autistic bully that everyone hated, but he was really just like the overweight kid who was like misunderstood. But like they all turn on him, and they're on like in a boat on this creek, and they wind up killing him. Like he falls out of the boat and like cracks his head open or whatever, and they like freak out and leave, and then they decide to go back and they find his body all bloated and shit by the side of the. It's a messed up movie, but it was like they bullied the bully.
That's pretty awful, but yeah, interesting.
Really good movie.
Yeah, it sounds good, but like Yeah.
Because you really hate the kid for a minute, and then you're like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
He had troubles.
Yeah. Oof. That's rough.
Yeah.
It was called Mean Creek.
Mean Creek.
Was that too spoiler filled? Or is that kind of the concept?
That's what they showed pretty much in the trailer.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know if like the guy dying was part of the like whatever.
Yeah, no. Like when I bought a copy of it, I was like, "Hey, that's that movie where in the trailer they killed that kid for being a
just making
bully.
sure we weren't spoiling it because it does sound interesting. I'm interested to see it. All right, well, that's all the news. Is there anything any other final points with this? We've gone extra long.
Yeah, I don't mind going extra long.
Oh, I don't either.
But a lot of Star Trek fans are freaking out. I'm seeing, and I understand because Warner Brothers is shit for right now. And hopefully it'll get back to being good, and which it hasn't been in years now. But I don't know what to think or what to hope for. But keep supporting Star Trek so that David Zaslav doesn't take it away. But you know what? They were already doing it. Like none of the streaming services but Netflix, I think, and Disney Plus maybe now, are making money. Like they're. Like, those two, I think, are in the black, and everyone else is altering and canceling shit.
I've been saying it for months now, especially on Multiverse News. We talk about this stuff a lot, and, like, I've been saying it for years, but, like, I just think that streaming content doesn't make sense. The business model doesn't make sense. A lot of times, these businesses are based on the idea that they'll make money later. They're just building an audience. Yeah. All these tech companies are all about, like, build, get as many users as you can, and eventually we'll figure out how to make money, and like
desperation breeds innovation, I believe is the belief that they have. Like, if we have to figure out a way to make money, we will.
I think it's more short-sighted than that. I think it's we only care about our out of this company, and so each person is like, I'm going to build this company till it IPOs. And so like they put it, they build it. Oh, I have billions of users.
So you're saying they're building it to sell it.
Basically. And everything is that way now. It's like everything's trying to be turned over. And if it's not on the macro level, it's happening on the micro level with every like person involved is like, okay, I just need to like to have a good quarter so that it pays off, this or that, and like everything's about getting that quick return so that their CEO pay is best. And then it's like it's like that whole thing of like selling or not putting out movies for the tax benefit. It's like but you're burning your audience, like, which is your long-term success is your audience.
I think more important than burning their audience, Warner Brothers has been burning bridges with creatives, and they, I don't know. I know you're behind on DC on Screen for sure, but a thing that recently happened is they canceled some movie. They had said last year they were going to get rid of Batgirl and Scoob 2 or whatever, and they were not going, and that was the last thing they were not going to release. That was the last thing they were going to shelve.
And they started to do it to something else.
They started to do it to, I mean, they still kind of have, but they're looking for a home for it.
Oh, it was the Wile E. Coyote movie.
Acme versus Coyote or something like that. And what had happened was that came out that it was getting canceled, and suddenly like the next day, like they didn't have any meetings with creatives because
all the creatives were bailing.
And were just like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, if you're going to keep doing this to people, we're not going to make movies for you because they're just getting shelved.
Yeah, so
which is great. I love that. And so
absolutely,
we covered that on Multiverse News at the time, and like, it's such a good trend, and like, so I just think that like the glut of content, we talk about it all the time. There's too much to watch.
Yeah,
like, and being a fan, it's almost like being a fan of Marvel, Star Trek, DC. If you watch everything they're putting out, you have no time for anything else. Especially if you're an animation fan and you're going deep enough, like into all of it. You're like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Star Trek. That's it. You're done. You can't like watch anything else.
If you can watch those things.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up. It's like even just one show, one of those series, like Marvel or whatever, or DC. I don't watch all the cartoons, like all the ones made for kids. Like, but I know people who do. Like they watch everything.
I can't watch everything.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we used to. We were younger, but there was just a lot less. It was like one cartoon show would be on for DC at a time, a year. They'd get like 22 episodes of a DC cartoon show, and then these days it's like there's probably, I don't even know how many DC shows there are, but there's like tons of them.
Yeah, we are very slowly catching up on Doctor Who because I desperately want to watch the new stuff.
I watched the specials.
Really good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I liked the clips that I saw.
Yeah. I'm excited because I think they're doing a fourth one that comes out Christmas Day, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like the first shooty thing.
First of the new Doctor.
I love Doctor Who, and I am enjoying, like, I'm currently, like, rewatching the Capaldi stuff with my wife. She's never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching that, and we're doing it slowly because we have so much other stuff that we watch. But yeah, I just really, I want Star Trek to be big, and I want it to be popular, and I want it to be recognized as, more than it is.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think Kelvinverse was their best shot at that, and they have squandered it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what to hope for.
Well, and the thing, if they had done something with the Kelvinverse, but I don't know. Again, it's like Kelvinverse, I think it was a great way of relaunching Star Trek, but like it also inherently wasn't for old fans. Like I liked it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, but inherently you're burning 4 or 5 series of content and starting over. And it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you're doing different stuff. I'm not saying you're not, but it's also like, are we going to do like a Kirk show, and then are we going to get another Picard show in 10? You know what I mean? Are they going to continue doing the Kelvinverse? Is it like going to be a whole different? Are they going to retell everything? It just feels, and I think it's sort of like that. It's the thing I was talking about earlier, where you're using up you're mining the content, but you're not producing new things.
Yeah,
I think the Kelvinverses are fun, great movies, but there's nothing new created from them.
Yeah, the misstep was Into Darkness. Like, the first one was original enough, and it was like, it made more money than like all the things, and people were excited again, and then Into Darkness came out, and it's like, everyone was like, oh, he's Khan. No, he's not Khan. Oh, it's Khan.
Yeah.
And then, like, so much of the emotional investment for that movie relies on you knowing who the shit Khan is and knowing Wrath of Khan. And you're like, the whole point of this was to start over so new people could be invested.
Yeah. Yep.
Hell.
Yep. I agree. And it's like, I don't hate Into Darkness, but like,
I don't either, but
it doesn't produce anything new to the universe. It's like, here's a different version of Khan. Here's a different version of the Klingons. Here's a different version of like all these characters. It's like, no, give me something new to care about.
And I loved Beyond, but they didn't market it at all.
Yeah, Beyond was really good. But if they'd done something really,
I just watched that the other night.
Oh yeah,
again for like the 5th or 6th time. Like,
I like Beyond a lot.
It's a solid ass Star Trek movie.
Yeah, it really is.
It's really good.
But it's like, if they had done something, even with all the same cast of characters, it was Benedict Cumberbatch kind of at the height of like coming off Sherlock and stuff. People loved him. If they'd done something with him and he was not Khan, and he was just a really interesting character that we all started thinking of as like, he is now a like lodestone of Star Trek. He could have been like some new character that we all cared about, and like, oh, that character who did this thing, like, we think of Khan and we think of like the moments with Khan, and now we think of Benedict Cumberbatch and just how he's Khan. You know what I mean? Like, we don't think about like, I can't really remember what he did in that movie that was memorable. You know what I mean?
He did some dope shit for real. Like, because like his whole thing was like trying to free his people.
Right.
So like, all like they kind of like played into his like genetic Superman ability and shit, and the way he jumped around and stuff, going to Kronos and starting shit there. Made you feel for him on that level. But yeah, like that movie left a taste in my mouth that I wasn't exactly happy with.
Yeah. it was just too referential. Like, not only the con of it all, but then ending it with the whole reverse, you're my best friend deal. Like, it was just like, okay, you're in, it's the same problem J.J. Abrams had with Star Wars. It's like, let's do Star Wars again for a new generation, but not like advance it at all. Like, it's kind of, and I keep saying it in that same way, like burning up the fans, but like, it's literally saying like, I don't care about, I don't care that this isn't going to provide new content and new interest for the old fans. Yeah. I'm just trying to create something that will capture the new fans, but also it relies so much on the old stuff. It's like, it's just a confused, muddled way of doing things.
It is, but at the same time, they as content creators have to understand that all they can do is do what they want to do, because there will always be the old fans who shit on it because they're not happy with it.
Right.
No matter what you do, there's no way to please everybody.
Yeah. I'm not, obviously you can't please everybody, but I think the mushy middle thing they did with Star Wars and Star Trek, J.J. Abrams did with both those things, like, felt, when I hate to say it, everybody hates like the second in the Star Wars sequels. What's it?
Last Jedi?
Last Jedi.
It's my favorite.
My favorite too.
My favorite Star Wars ever.
When I think about,
it's a fantastic film.
When I think about, like, a lot of the older fans do hate that, and like, we're not a big Star Wars fan, so I think that's what allowed us to like it. But when I think about that trilogy, like, and what was interesting about it, I think of that freaking Last Jedi throne room fight. You know what I mean? Like, almost every mental image it conjures in my head is from Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, I have a general sense about the first one, how like, oh yeah, it was pretty good. And it, like, I have just a general Star Warsy sense about the first one. But like, all the specific cool new things they added feel like they're all from the second one. You know? Yeah. They're all from Last Jedi. And yeah, it just, whatever. I don't know. We got to get off of here. I got to get to work. We got Christmas tomorrow.
I have plenty of things to do. I've got to go watch Aquaman. I just have no excitement at all.
Sorry. When are you going?
I don't know. I've got several things to do before that, but sometime today.
Cool. I'd like to see it. I wouldn't mind going catching it, but I gotta get a lot done here first. But I may shoot you a message shoot me a message when you're going. I may try to catch up with you.
All right.
That's about it for Star Trek. We're just talking about all kinds of things about fandom, and
news of the merger brings about many questions. And, or not news of the merger that is happening, but they're in talks to do it.
Yeah.
Many worrisome things.
Indeed.
But, that's a problem for future Matt and future Dave.
I'm thinking about Next Generation did it best.
Did what? Like it was the most popular one.
Well, I mean,
ever.
like,
ever.
I don't mean just Star Trek. I mean, like, of anything, of a way of bringing back an old IP, keeping it in universe, but like creating it to create completely new stories and for a new audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It took 3 years for them to get there.
It took them 3 years to get good, but it didn't take them 3 years to be like, to know what they were, which is like, we're in the same universe, but we're not so reliant on the old stories that you can't watch it. And we're not so, I don't know,
out there that is pissing off the original fans.
Yeah. It's just like, well, I mean, and it was.
And it did.
It did. But I think in an unreasonable fashion. And I mean, that's just different people's perspectives, but.
Yeah. I have magazines from that time and like the letters sections where people are just like, there's no way they'll ever be able to catch lightning and twice and it sounds like today's message boards. It's just people like, how dare they not use Kirk and Spock? Yeah. How dare they?
I think that's one of a show that's doing it well right now is House of the Dragon.
Okay,
it's Game of Thrones spinoff. But it's like 150 years before.
Oh, okay.
So it's like telling the history of one of the houses that is very like signature of the show, the Game of Thrones. And so it's going back and you're seeing like how that house like came to be. And it's doing a really interesting where it's like jumping in time. It's a totally different show than Game of Thrones in a lot of ways. They change actors in the middle of the season because they go through so much time. So you start off with these like young actresses and then they jump forward like 30 or I don't know, 15 years or something. It's completely different actresses. It's really
I
well
love
done.
time jumps like that.
It's really well done. I didn't think so when it happened, I didn't know it was going to happen. I hadn't paid attention. We talked about it on PandaVision, and like when it happened, I was like, I don't know, man. I really liked that actress, and I was really caring about her character. I was really in, and now this is new person, and I don't like. It's like I'm not imprinted on this person yet. Like I don't know who this is, but they did a really good job with it, and I totally won me over. And so I'm really excited because they're trying to tell like the epic story of this house. Kind of, it's basically Game of Thrones, The Crown, where like they're showing like the history of this entire family, not just it's not one person's story; it's the whole family story. But anyway. I think that's kind of doing it well, where it's like this is Game of Thrones, unmistakably Game of Thrones. Same iconography. There's dragons in it, like whatever. But like it is about something totally new and different. The stories, the characters are different. You can reference the stuff that's coming in 150 years, but it's not like It's that show is doing the spin-off thing well.
Neat.
Anyway, Joel and True.
Live long and prosper.
I'll sit here and chat with you on the couch for like 5 more hours if we don't stop.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.